You're live.
Namaskar. Cordial welcome to our distinguished speaker, Dr. Anand Ranganathan, and to our audience for the 10th day of this insightful celebration of Bharatiyata. This is Smriti Khare, Assistant Professor of Commerce at a well-known educational institution in Bangalore and a volunteer of Disha for the past few years. The MyBHARAT campaign brought to us by Disha Bharat has taken us all through the inspiring history, the compelling current potential, and the bright future which is taking us towards the state of Vishwaguru Bharata that we've all dreamt of. Today, as a part of the Distinguished Speaker Series, we present to you a profound talk by Dr. Anand Ranganathan. I would like to request Shri Pradeep Natraj, a software engineer by qualification and a full-time coordinator of Disha for close to a decade now, to introduce to us today's guest. Could you please, sir?
Namaste. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. We want that education by which character is formed, strength of mind is increased, intellect is expanded, and a man can stand on one's own feet. So says Swami Vivekananda. You may be wondering why this quote came here. It is very relevant for today's lecture and even for the speaker and also for Disha. Because Disha's motto is value education. We are not here to replace the current education system. Because if we see the current education system, it is focusing definitely on breadwinning education. Because if you see the current society, we are producing greatest and greatest of doctors, greatest and greatest of engineers, greatest and greatest of nurses, and greatest and greatest of good professionals. But the question remains, are we producing good human beings? The question remains. The solution is value-based education. And Disha has been giving this value education by complementing the current education system with by giving the value education and the skill-based education from last 15 years. We touch upon all the stakeholders of the education system, namely the teachers, students, and parents. In order to reach all these sectors, we have been conducting personality development workshops. And for teachers, we are doing a workshop called as Prerana, a journey from teacher to guru. And for parents, we have been doing parents enrichment program. And we have reached till now more than 2.5 lakh students and more than 5,000 lecturers and more than 1,000 parents. But today we are here for MyBHARAT campaign and talk about from a great eminent speaker. And it's my privilege to introduce the most distinguished speaker of the day, Dr. Anand Ranganathan ji. Dr. Anand Ranganathan. And it's my privilege to introduce Sir. Sir is an assistant professor at Jawaharlal Nehru University, Delhi. And Sir has obtained his BSc Honours Chemistry from St. Stephen's College, Delhi. After which, he left on a Nehru Centenary Scholarship for University of Cambridge, United Kingdom, where he obtained his BA Tripos in Natural Sciences, his MA, and later on went on to do his PhD from the same university. After a postdoctoral stint at Cambridge, Sir returned to India to join International Center for Genetic Engineering and Biotechnology, Delhi, where he ran his lab for 16 years. In 2015, Sir joined Special Center for Molecular Medicine, JNU, Delhi, as an associate professor. His laboratory works in the area of directed evolution and pathogenesis with special emphasis on tuberculosis and malaria. Sir is a popular author, orator, and analyst. Sir appears, as you all know, Sir appears on national televisions as a panelist and also writes columns in several magazines. Sir is a very popular figure in Twitter, and his tweets receives wide attention in intellectual circles. Sir has written 3 books, all of which are novels. The Land of Wilted Rose, For Love and Honor, The Rat Eater. and co-authored with Chitra. And it's a privilege to have you here for today's program, because we all know the government of India has recently launched National Education Policy 2020. In the light of this great revolution in educational sector, your talk will definitely throw light to all our audience. So we're all waiting to hear from you, sir. Sir, it's over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. Good evening. And thank you very much for that very kind, rather embarrassing introduction. Just a small correction. I'm a professor, not an assistant professor, but that really doesn't matter. It really is a great pleasure delivering this small talk. And I would like to thank MyBHARAT for giving me this opportunity, and also your wonderful audience that is online. I thought for this lecture, I would concentrate on a few things. And I have intended this lecture not as a listing of educational reforms or education policy changes in the last 70 years, because I feel that would defeat the whole purpose and make it sound like a bureaucrat is delivering the achievements of his government or past and present governments. Because if there's one thing that the bureaucrats are really good at, it is that if you have one policy and you tell it to a bureaucrat, he'll come up with 10 laudable things about that policy. It reminds me a little bit about the scene, that lovely scene from Sholay, where I think it was Dharmendra who said, "Zyada to nahi bol diya partner." So if Dharmendra is Modi, then the bureaucrat is Amitabh Bachchan, who says, "Ab bol hi diya to dekh lenge." And just as an example, of course, it is not connected to this at all, but after the demonetization step, one of the bureaucrats actually said that within 4 years, 3 to 4 years, India would become a cashless economy. This is such a wonderful step. And at that point of time, when demonetization happened, I think November 2016, the total amount of circulating money was 16 trillion rupees. So talking about going cashless in 3 or 4 years, which is right about now, India should have gone cashless, but instead, the total amount of money that is circulating in India right now is about 23 to 24 trillion rupees. So, bureaucrats have their own way of functioning. I'm not saying that I'm not going to be entirely critical of, the bureaucratic way of things. But the fact of the matter is that we need to be really stinging in our criticism if things are to improve. And I also would like to say that, nor is this a talk on the new education policy, which the gentleman who introduced me was possibly looking forward to. No, it's not. And I think that's on purpose. Partly also to do with the fact that the new education policy is 700 pages long, and I haven't really gone through all the 700 pages. I've gone through bits and pieces. But I truly believe that much more important than how you teach is what you teach. Because if what you are teaching is wrong, biased, subjective, outdated, airbrushed, no matter howsoever much reforms you may make in how you teach, you will continue to churn out Indians with a narrow and biased version of history and science. And unfortunately, I put to you that ever since we became independent and were allowed to teach whatever we wanted to, howsoever we wanted to, we have actually let our students down. There have been no educational reforms that one can be proud of. And as far as educational reforms in what we teach, it is, I would say, not even zero, it is below zero. And that is what the true shame is. And hopefully I would elucidate that in the next half an hour or so, because I think that's very important. A lot of emphasis has been, perhaps rightly so, been put on the new education policy, how this is something that has come after 30, 35 odd years, how the whole manner of teaching is changing, the years are shifting, 10 plus 2 is 5 plus 3 plus 3, or whatever you may call it. So many new streams are introduced. There are a lot of good things in it. Vocational training is one thing that I particularly like. But at the end of the day, you are still going to be teaching those students even though you might have changed the way you're teaching them, the years, you would still be teaching them the same books. And I think that is what we must concentrate on if we need to reform education. The education policy, as I said, is much more important than, than how you teach is what you teach. So let me go one by one and kind of in different domains, how, even though how in terms of what we teach, not how we teach. You see that ignorance, as you are concerned, you can escape culpability if you realize the errors. That is what leaders have done since independence, that they have purposely having realized that what we are teaching to our school children or to our university students is totally wrong, but they haven't actually changed it. Instead, they have made it worse, because in some sense, because education is on concurrent list, it's a state subject as well. There is so much of politics involved in education that the first thing that is the victim of what we teach to our students is actually objectivity. Now, in science, I can tell you, because I've studied science, that what we teach to our students is not exactly at the forefront of scientific advancement in any of these areas. It is not to say that just because it is 2020, you should not be teaching about Newton's laws, not at all. But there has to be a good mix of old science and new science. This is not to say that old science is all redundant, not at all. I mean, we have some of the most amazing discoveries that have been made are centuries old. In the case of Indian science, millennia old, sometimes more than a millennia. But do our students know this, for example? I mean, you ask any student that who discovered, quote unquote, discovered gravity. They are not going to take an Indian's name. They're going to take Newton's name. So for so many equations, for so many theorems, especially in math, this is the case. So is it because we willfully ignored the contribution of Indian science and mathematics over the last 70 years? And if so, why did we do that? And that is much more perplexing to me as a student of science, because I can still realize or understand why you would be subjective about history or historical figures and not tell about their crimes or tell about their achievements, because that depends on your ideology. That is how we are built. But in science, why would you hide the fact that Indians were good at it, especially in mathematics? Why would you hide the fact that Indians discovered so many things that I, as a student of science and a teacher of science, came to know about 20 years after I left studying science in terms of undergraduate degrees or postgraduate degrees? Why is that? So that is one aspect that is really perplexing to me, because that hints at politics entering the domain of science. Now, of course, it is not to any extent as much as politics enters the domains of the arts and the humanities. But it would be a crime, because science cannot be political. Now, I know I'm from JNU, and but I'm from the other side of the Iron Curtain, if you know what I mean. Nobody troubles the scientists that much. And it should always remain so, because there is no politics there can be politics in you asking people to research some particular area, yes. But in whatever you research, there cannot be politics, because it is science. It is based on discovery. It is based on theorems, and it is completely apolitical. And to see even that small bits of Indian achievement being ruthlessly ignored in our science curriculum, in what we teach to our students, is heartbreaking. More so because in the last 3 or 4 years, I've been co-authoring articles on forgotten Indian scientists, and I have learned so much, not only about what we did not, what we weren't taught as students, but also the pain, the anger, the anguish, and the ignorance and the apathy with which Indian scientists were left to fend for themselves, were ignored by the state. So many names come to mind. For example, the person till now, I think the most successful drug developed indigenously by an Indian is urea stilbene, which is against Kala Azar. And not many people know that it was discovered by Professor Brahmachari almost more than 100 years ago, and a little around 100 years ago. But these things are not taught to us. There are so many scientists that come to mind. Really, it is mind-boggling. It is shocking. You have Karl Chopra, who's, you can say, the father of pharmacology, certainly Indian pharmacology. Then you have, did you know, for example, that fingerprinting was invented by two Indians as an aid for forensic science, Huck and Bose. No one knows them. Very few. They were certainly never in the curriculum. Just to take one final example in science, Professor G.N. Ramachandran. He should have got 3 Nobel Prize, leave alone Nobel Prize, leave alone Bharat Ratna. He didn't even get the Padma Shri. Can you believe it? When you see so many, nothing against the field, but so many of your favorite journalists getting Padma Shri, and here is someone who actually invented algorithm for tomography, who solved the structure for collagen, and who gave a methodology called the Phi-Psi plot to determine the protein structure. These are fundamental discoveries in science, and he lies forgotten, certainly by Indians. So it's a real shame as to why, and it is something which kind of confounds me, because this is certainly not politics, unless somebody was so bitter about the fact that G.N. Ramachandran and so many other people might have had ideologies, their ideological inklings away from science, that they decided to, completely omit people like G.N. Ramachandran and so many other people from the science curriculum. So you can have howsoever great new education policy or years or manners of teaching, ways of teaching students, but unless you change what we teach them, I don't see things changing much. To give you another example, religion. For example, we already we as a nation are so scared of talking about religion, yet 99% of us are religious. In fact, according to census 2011, 155 million Indian infants, not adults, infants, 155 million infants are categorized as Hindu, Sikh, Muslim, and Christian. So did the census man or census lady knock on the door and was greeted by an infant and 2-year-old, 3-year-old, and did the census lady ask that infant, what is your religion? And did that infant say, oh no, hang on, I'm a Hindu, no, I'm a Muslim? So this is the way. And when religion is so omnipresent, omnipotent, why don't we ever wonder, why don't we tell the truth about all religions? But we don't. And why don't we? And I think that is one thing. And do you think this new education policy is going to correct that? I don't think so. I think we as a nation are scared. So we would say, all religions teach peace, all religions are equal, but we will never tell the truth about these religions. And when you certainly have religion or theology being taught as part of curriculum, why don't we have atheism, or certainly those modern day atheists who've written so many books? Hitch comes to mind, Dawkins, so many others. Why aren't those books prescribed in the curriculum? Is it because we're scared to teach atheism? And this is certainly confounding, because as India, I would say, is 1.3 billion people, or 1.381 billion people, according to Shashi Tharoor. We are culturally Hindu, and there are sects and domains in Hinduism that practice atheism. So it is not that atheism is something to be scoffed at. It has been welcomed in our culture. People are proud to be atheists, unlike so many countries where if you declare yourself as atheist, it carries a death sentence. And yet we don't teach atheism in school. So that is a tragedy, and I think that exposes us in many ways, because it is only much later that you come to know so many things that are wrong, in religion, in all religions, and particularly in very unfriendly religions, that we don't tell them. Now, to quote, for example, Vivekananda, as the gentleman who introduced me said, that he quoted Vivekananda saying that we need to make students who are culturally aware and who are fearless and all that. How can you be fearless if you don't understand, if you don't convey to others the things about religion that are wrong? And we've all admired Gurudev Tagore, but how many of us know of his quote that said that if there are two religions in this world that are out to destroy all other religions, they are Christianity and Islam. Now, if Mohan Bhagwat had said it, or Narendra Modi had said it, my God, I mean, the government would have fallen. But Rabindranath Tagore said it. So you ignore it, you can't fight it, you can't troll Rabindranath Tagore, and B, you omit it from your curriculum. So you talk about all the other things that Rabindranath Tagore said and did. You talk about his poetry, but you leave out all the other stuff that you don't like. And this is the tragedy, because this is exactly what you are being selective. You are not shaping modern Indians. You're not shaping young Indians that are aware of what is right and what was wrong to make their own decisions. I'll come to this a bit more. I'll take examples from Gandhi, Mahatma Gandhi, and even B.R. Ambedkar. That we have systematically left out things that we found uncomfortable across governments. It's not just that the Congress is left out. The BJP, for some odd reason, is also scared to talk about the things that Ambedkar talked about. For example, Islam. You've never seen BJP leaders, certainly not the top rung, even the lower rung, ever talk about this. It's always about bhaichara, about all those things, but it's never about the truth about religion. Now, as I've already said, and please allow me to delve a little bit more into this aspect, because I think that's very important. And why it is important is because one of the results of national education policy is going to be, as many have said, is that a lot of our engineering and science institutes are going to open their doors to humanities and arts. Now, this is a double-edged sword. And already people have written a lot of articles on it. That is IIT going to become another JNU? Well, it will certainly become another JNU. And a JNU will never become an IIT, because whatever we've been teaching in the domain of humanities is so completely one-sided that people start hating anyone who espouses the other point of view. And I dare say, if you were to quote Ambedkar, his teachings and his writings on Islam, without mentioning that they are by Ambedkar, there would be riots. And if Ambedkar was alive today and he had said these things on national television or wherever, believe me, he would have been lynched. This is the extent to which we as a society are scared. And unless we reform this, we are not going to change. Now, to give you one example, let's take JNU, because I'm from JNU. Now, of course, it is supposed to be a communist den, JNU, and everyone says, remove JNU and ban JNU and all that stuff. But you tell me, you see, there are a lot of people who have read a lot about communism, and they have realized that it is a cult It is a dangerous cult. It is something that is only to be believed by utterly brainwashed people. And I'm not just saying this being disparaging towards people who are communists. Good luck, be a communist. But the fact of the matter is that you have to be mentally unstable to continue to espouse an ideology that has around the world killed 100 million people, and still you respect it. I somehow, you have the CPIM, the Communist Party of India, Marxist, the only party in the world that actually publicly hailed the Tiananmen Square massacre, in which 10,534 innocents were murdered. And yet they talk about human rights. There are so many examples like that. Now, I'm not saying that you're going to force people not to study Karl Marx. No, certainly, as Ronald Reagan said, who are communists? Those who read Marx and Engels. And who are anti-communists? Those who understand Marx. So by all means, you must teach. Marx should be in the curriculum, but also should be in the curriculum. For example, just to the top of my head, a book called The Black Book of Communism, that meticulously and academically, scholarly, details the crimes of communism in every country where it had some presence. Now, if you were to teach that, and if you were to teach Marx, allow people to make their own decisions. And you can only airbrush history to such an extent as politicians do, because they have an ulterior motive. But as a student, if you read about, for example, the Che, you have a poster of Che on your wall, and then you read that the guy was a mass murderer, he was a homophobe. He had concentration camps like areas where he segregated people. He executed people without trial. So would you still have that poster, Che poster on the wall? Out of 100 people, maybe 50 still would. Good luck to them. They would be communists, a new crop of communists. But at least 50 would realize that, look here, this guy was wrong. And that is how education, so it is not how you teach. So it won't be how you teach Che or how you teach the crimes of Mao, by omitting them. It is what you teach. And time and again, I tell you why that is so important. Now, I come back to religion for a reason. And the reason is follows. For example, you talk about Hinduism. There are a lot of things about Hinduism. It is, as I say, in Hinduism, religion is an offshoot of a way of life. Whereas in Islam, a way of life is an offshoot of religion. So as far as Hinduism is concerned, there is absolutely nothing wrong in making students aware about the ills of Hinduism. For example, the caste system, its origins, the Varna system, and so many other things that are wrong that Dr. Ambedkar also talked about in meticulous detail. So it is not that this nation has shied from it. Yes, I would say many governments don't talk about it to an extent that I think they should, but people are aware of it. So there is a lot of criticism about Hinduism, rightly so, about the ills of Hinduism. And there is a lot of, eulogizing of Dr. Ambedkar because he brought it out very starkly and without any sugarcoating, which is how it should be. But on the other hand, when Dr. Ambedkar talked about Islam, and let me quote what he said about Islam, that Islam is a closed corporation, and the distinction that it makes between Muslims and non-Muslims is a very real, very positive, and very alienating distinction. The brotherhood of Islam is not the universal brotherhood of man. It is the brotherhood of Muslims for Muslims only. There is a fraternity, but its benefit is confined to those within that corporation. For those who are outside that corporation, there is nothing but contempt and enmity. The second defect of Islam is that it is a system of social government and is incompatible with a local self-government, because the allegiance of a Muslim does not rest on his domicile in the country which is his, but on the faith to which he belongs. To the Muslim, where it is well with me, there is my country, is unthinkable. Wherever there is the rule of Islam, there is his own country. In other words, Islam can never allow a true Muslim to adopt India as his motherland and regard a Hindu as his kith and kin. Now, this is what Dr. Ambedkar said. Can you imagine a politician in today's day and age saying this and getting away from it? It's unthinkable. And what is tragic is that it was Dr. Ambedkar who warned Indians against subjectivity. So much so that when a book came, about the ills of Hinduism, I think Mayo was the author, and Mahatma Gandhi described it as a gutter inspector's report. Dr. Ambedkar said, well, it is all very well, to write this book. But I don't want people to get, go home with the impression that all the ills are in Hinduism alone. He wrote this, that there are ills in Islam as well. But do we know of this? Do we know, for example, why Dr. Ambedkar did not convert to Islam, but to Buddhism? He said, and I quote him, conversion to Islam or Christianity will denationalize the depressed classes. If they go to Islam, the number of Muslims will be doubled and the danger of Muslim domination also becomes real. These are historical facts and quotes. Why are we hiding it from our new generation? History for us is either to be hidden or invented. We tell and retell what we like of it, and of what we don't. It's almost as though we scrunch it up and slip it under the mattress like a plastic bag, like we do at home. And then we sit on it for ages, for decades. And as for the other fact that all religions are equal, well, I certainly don't want any discrimination amongst Indians. They're all Indians, whatever religion they espouse. But the fact is, if you are having religious classes, if you're teaching kids religion, if 155 million Indian infants have been proclaimed to be religious, then don't you think it is incumbent that people should know what does La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah mean? Do you think Piyush Goyal, who said that every morning I get up at 6 a.m. in the morning and ghanti bajate hue I say La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, does he understand what it means? Does he understand the gravity of what he just said? I'll translate that. It means there is no God but the Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger. It is also translated in the Quran, chapter 37, verse 35. No one has the right to be worshipped but Allah. So here is a religion that, the most sacred epithet of that religion, the Shahada, which every true Muslim must espouse, says that there is no other God. No one has the right to be worshipped but Allah. By all means, hug, be friendly. They are Indian. Everyone is Indian. But does it mean that in doing so, we must hide these facts? Does it mean that we must hide chapter 98, verse 6? Indeed, they who disbelieved among the people of the scripture and the polytheists, i.e. Hindus, will be in the fire of hell, abiding eternally therein. Those are the worst of creatures. Does it mean that we should hide chapter 2, verse 221? Do not marry the polytheist women unless they come to believe in Islam. A Muslim slave girl is better than a polytheist woman, even though she may attract you. And do not give your women in marriage to polytheist men unless they come to believe. A Muslim slave is better than a polytheist. Does it mean that we should ignore chapter 4, verse 56? Indeed, those who disbelieve in our verses, we will drive them into a fire. Every time their skins are roasted through, we will replace them with other skins, so they may taste the punishment. Indeed, Allah is ever exalted and mighty and wise. And there are thousands of such verses. Now, do we teach these verses? We have reached to such an extent that the RSS chief, I don't know whether the present RSS chief or the previous one, called Lord Ram as Imam Hind. Does he even understand what that means? So there are so many things that are wrong in what we are teaching, but we are fixated upon how we are teaching. And I think this can only lead to disaster. Now, let me also shift to, the other aspects, which is about it is not only what we teach, it is that what we at hand to teach, So So what we teach is, of course, more important than how we teach. But where are the books that are objective? Where is the history that tells the truth, that tells the things as they happen without airbrushing? And that is why I believe that history that is written by victors is peddled by the vanquished, and we are vanquished. Till today, there are books that tell you about the Aryan invasion theory, and slowly turned to Aryan migration theory, and then it has turned to something else, and now they say, oh, Aryans came for a cup of filter coffee and vadas in the evening, and that is how they mingled. But these things remain. Is there a book that counters it? Science has begun to counter it, but that's not enough, because you are ultimately teaching the students who are learning humanity. We need new books. So, it is much more how we teach, but even in what we teach, that has glorified great tyrants, and therefore we are constantly searching for answers, forever drowning in ridicule and self-loathing, feeling inferior, weakened, and therefore prone to division. Nations weaken, not because of their past, but rather by how they are taught it. And just to give you one other example, what happened a couple of days ago, of course, a little bit of my thunder was stolen because I was saving it for this talk. But this legend called True Indology, talked about it 2 days ago. And is it who's the god of thunder? Is it Indra? I don't really know. Well, I mean, so it is only appropriate that True Indology stole my thunder, because he's an absolute legend. So what he said, it still exists in our books, which is that King Ashoka converted to Buddhism after the Kalinga War. After he saw all the destruction, he wept and he converted. The fact is that he had converted much before he waged the Kalinga War. How many students know this? In fact, I came to know of this a couple of years ago when Sanjeev Sanyal, wonderful economist venturing into the fields of history, which is also very important, he talked about it in his book, The Ocean of Churn. Before that, I believe that took, it was, as were told to us, he was a Hindu king, and then he waged this war, terrible war, hundreds of thousands killed. And then he saw the destruction, the death and everything, and said, oh God, no, I have to convert. The facts tell otherwise. So, this is the extent to which we have been brainwashed. And we can't change it unless we bring out an objective version of the history. And do you think, if you think that it is the Congress that is solely responsible for this, I think we need a reality check, because not only is BJP and other non-Congress parties equally culpable in not telling what exactly happened, both versions of the history. They also do not explore and tell and bring out the versions of history that have been airbrushed. For example, I bet you, if you ask, I mean, the way we eulogize, the way BJP leaders eulogize Mahatma Gandhi, do they even know about his role or his views in the aftermath of the Mopla riot? Do they know what he said? I mean, it is shocking. Do they know about so many things about Mahatma Gandhi that you would cringe? For example, asking the Jews to basically jump off a cliff, accept surrender, so many hundreds and thousands of things that Mahatma Gandhi said, that the BJP leaders, they may say, look, inwardly, they may say, look, this is important. But outwardly, they dare not criticize him. Why? What are they scared of? The truth? Same goes with Jawaharlal Nehru. Now, you may openly say, there's so many things that Jawaharlal Nehru did were wrong. And leaders, because he's not eulogized to the extent as Mahatma Gandhi is, so it is easier to criticize Jawaharlal Nehru. And also because, he was a powerful man, he was a prime minister, he made political decisions rather than moral and ethical ones that Mahatma Gandhi made. So it is easier to criticize Nehru. Still, there have been so many people, current crop of BJP politicians who, and I have personally seen, they say, look, we need to be like Nehru. You know what Nehru told the cartoonist Shankar? Don't spare me. This iconic Nehruvian phrase, or not Nehruvian phrase, a phrase uttered by Jawaharlal Nehru, that, criticize me as much as you want. Shankar, don't spare me, Shankar. You draw me. Shankar was a very famous cartoonist. Now, this, I've heard BJP leaders say this, i.e., the interpretation of that is only a pat on the back of these distortions who glorified Nehru, saying that he was the protector of liberty and freedom of speech and expression, the paragon. Do they even know that there are about 50 or 60 things that Nehru said and did, and his government did, that ruthlessly trampled and suppressed freedom of speech and expression? Do they know this? And if they do, and I don't think they do, but if they do, don't you think it is appropriate that the current crop, even in the new education policy, should know all those things? To give you a few examples, the First Amendment was brought in with the clauses of reasonable restrictions by Nehru that included incitement, disruption of public order. Majru was jailed for 1 year for calling Nehru Hitler ka chela. The first democratically elected communist government in Kerala was dismissed. So many books, so many editors were jailed, so many books were banned. Even harmonium was banned. Now, don't you think the current crop of students, they deserve to know this? Once they know this, I don't mind them saying, despite knowing this, despite Nehru being, stomping like a fascist on freedom of speech and expression, despite these facts being told to them, if still they believe that Nehru upheld freedom of speech, let them. They'll become communists, brainwashed. But at least give them a choice. When I was growing up, it was Nehru Chacha all the way, but of course that was Congress government. So, you can say that, yes, you eulogize. Even so many people, even today, believe that, emergency was good for this country. So that's why I'm saying, when you have things like this, and it is not just a question of contemporary figures, Nehru, I don't know how much time I'm taking, I'm sorry, but I think these are important things that need to be told as they should be. Not just the contemporary figures. If you look at the psychological reason why still we hold on to Aurangzeb, Babur, as heroes. Why? Because their truths have not been told. If today we believe Tipu is a hero, so many people believe across religions, Muslims, Hindus, Christians, they believe because they've not been told the reality of Tipu. All what they've been told is that Tipu was a great man, he fought against the British, and he gave money for the renovation of one mutt. That's it, one mutt. They don't know the facts. All they know is that serial, The Sword of Tipu Sultan, glorified, eulogized Tipu. And the Indian left cheers when the statues of the evil racist king Leopold, was removed in Belgium, the guy who killed millions in the Congo. But it celebrates Tipu Jayanti and objects to Aurangzeb Road being renamed. Why? Because tyrants who murder Hindus are not tyrants but heroes. Praising Tipu is like praising King Leopold for building roads and ports in the Congo, balancing out ivory trade and a million murders. But to understand Tipu, one must read his own words. That is as primary a source as you can go to. And it is called the Manifesto of Tipu Sultan, his own words. And believe me, if this comes in the school textbook, if 100 people believe that Tipu was a hero, out of those, and if all those were sensible people, out of them, I can bet you 95 would say, my God, what have we been doing? What have we been reading? Not only did we believe these things about Aurangzeb and Ashoka and Nehru and Gandhi, not only were we, not told the truth about what Ambedkar said, what so many people said, but we've been eulogizing this guy. So, a chapter that has verbatim the Manifesto of Tipu Sultan should be in the textbook. And it is a terrifying proclamation. And it calls for all Muslims to come together to convert infidels and wage jihad. I quote, whoever refuses to obey would be treated as an accursed infidel. And Tipu was outraged that some Muslim rulers weren't following the tenets of Islam. and had turned supporters of the infidel. I quote, he said, annihilation of the infidels was a sacred duty. Tens of thousands of Hindus and Christians, not just Hindus and Christians, were forcibly converted on the orders of Tipu Sultan. Here is Tipu Sultan in his own words to his commander, Budruz Khan. I quote, you did right to circumcise the captive Nayars. The Hindus of Coorg, particularly, they suffered brutally this onslaught of Tipu, and thousands, murders, tortures, forced conversions. No one was spared. Even dead Hindus were converted, even dead Hindus. 400,000 Malabar Hindus were converted to Islam. Descendants of Mandya Mayagars do not celebrate Diwali till this day. Do you know why? Because 700 of them, men, women, children, were publicly hung on the orders of Tipu. You read the personal account of the butchery by Tipu in Calicut by Bartholomew. Men, women, and children were paraded naked and trampled by elephants. But crimes of Tipu weren't limited to Hindus, as I said. You read the horrific account by General Munro. Tipu destroyed 27 churches, captured 60,000 Christians, converted 30,000, killed thousands, emptied Mangalore of them. He tortured, murdered, converted tens of thousands of Hindus and Christians, destroyed their temples and churches, openly called for jihad against them. And yet, Rahul Gandhi called him symbol of communal harmony. Why is that? That can only be because A, he's being devious, being political. So even though he knows that Tipu was a tyrant, he still, for political reasons, is calling him a symbol of communal harmony. But that is giving too much respect to his intelligence. I think it's just ignorance. He is also a product, like all of us are, of our school education system. He also watched the same serials we did on Doordarshan, Sword of Tipu Sultan. So he feels Tipu is a symbol of communal harmony because we've been taught this. So I think I should end here and leave some time for question and answers. But I hope you get my gist. It is I would say possibly a cry in the wilderness that please let us not worry about how we teach. Let us now sincerely worry about what we teach. Let us have enough material that we should be able to tell the truth to our new generation. I think I should stop there. Thank you very much. Hello.
Smriti madam.
Namaskar, sir. Well, it was indeed a very charged speech by you, and several things being revealed, several of those things that a few of us will have read from here and there, or maybe heard from acquaintances here and there. But a question that we've received from the audience would be, since Disha Bharat has been associated so deeply with value-based education system, would you please let us know that apart from the Marx-centric, academia that we are in today, do you see the relevance of, or how do you see the relevance of value-based education in both primary and higher education? And how would you say that we are successful through the syllabus and the curriculum in promoting values again amongst the Indian youth?
Right. Thank you very much. I think before I answer, I forgot one of the reasons why I'm wearing what I am is our thought. I forgot to say this during my lecture, is the thought that, when words are not enough, as they say, a picture says 1,000 words. So as far as our education policy and our education reforms is concerned, I thought instead of blabbering on and on about the lack thereof of it, I will just wear this thing. And it would be evident enough as to what I think about what our education system is. Coming back to the question that you asked, I think it's a very important question, and I think it also goes a little bit into the areas of science, and I think I did delve upon it initially when I talked about that when you're talking about giving values, we shouldn't confuse it with I would say religious values, and I don't think even you did, but I'm just saying that it is in the common perception of all Indians that all good values, all decent values seem to be coming from what we've been taught in our religion. Hinduism is different because Hinduism, as I said, is a way of life, according to me and according to a lot of people. It has a domain of religion, but essentially it is a way of life. So there would be a value system associated with that way of life. And we should be able to criticize that Hindu value system as much as praise it as well. So there are both sides to it. But here I would like to, and of course, what you say, I agree with you. But then again, I did mention in passing that another huge value system that we seem to ignore is actually coming from the domain of science itself. Why has science become like a cardboard for us, like chewing cardboard, that, chemistry, physics, mathematics, biology? Whereas, why don't we teach the fact that ethics and morality and consciousness and so many of their attributes that we normally associate with religion, sympathy, empathy, karuna, they are actually attributes of science. Science can explain it, and science has. To give you one example, so many people, understand when I say theory of evolution, or as survival of the fittest, and that is such a wrong way of interpreting Darwin's theory of evolution. In fact, it is so wrong that it gave birth to this horrible thing called social Darwinism, that it was used by imperialists, that survival of the fittest. If you're capable of surviving, if you can outdo fellow human beings, then it is right. You are in the right. So you can annihilate cultures, races, continents, and you can feel proud like Churchill, to annihilate other races. That was the misinterpretation of Darwinism. But there is a correct interpretation of Darwinism as well, that a huge aspect of the theory of evolution, the endowment of it, is actually empathy, is this thing called karuna, that our brain has increased 3 times in volume in the last 3 million years because of the cognitive facilities that we have. And it is crucial for human development and evolution, and human kindness and generosity, and what you call our value system, respect for something, not respect for human beings per se, but respect for what they stand for, justice. These are all endowments, and science tells you this. But where do we learn this? So when you talk of value system, I just hope we inculcate as much of these so-called value systems that come from hitherto from religious teachings or way of life teachings, as much as we do for non-religious scientific thinking.
That makes a lot of sense. Very well answered. In fact, there are several questions that are flowing in through our Facebook page. But I think there's just one question that I feel is the most essential. And that is, like you even mentioned while you were speaking, that today's the young generation of teachers, which you've mentioned as well, that we have been taught the same kind of an education system, and we dream to change the education system in the country. So what would be your message to the new age teachers that are teaching the new generation students in changing their ability to objectively study?
Yeah, I think, it's not for me to, lest I be construed as being patronizing, because I'm a teacher myself. It's not for me to tell teachers anything. But all I would say is that what I try to do, and what many of my colleagues also try to do, is when you're teaching, be absolutely fearless. Just say, because what you teach is going to survive you. And I don't need to take names, but it is a fact that many of my teachers, whom I love and adore and think about them all the time, are no more. But I remember them, and I am what I am because of what they taught me, not how they taught me, what they taught me. And I was very fortunate in that respect. And some of them, they feared saying, their open mind. Some of them were ideological. I was too young to realize, that the age, there's an age where you realize the ideology of the teacher as well, So I think if we go about it the wrong way, if in religious teachings we don't tell the calamitous way in which religion can have an effect on a human psyche, if we don't tell the truths about the religion, about all religion, about how they're not equal, about some are not religion at all, religions at all, then we are, you can preach howsoever much you want. You will never be able to create the kind of beings that Vivekananda wanted. To be honest, I could just say that if you can be a student like Ambedkar and a teacher like Ambedkar, I think you have fulfilled your potential, both as a student and as a teacher.
So well said. Also, another question, sir, and I think we'll have to quickly wrap this up in another 4 to 5 minutes. I'm sorry, I'm rushing you through it.
No.
But here's a question, and it says, India has developed several academic institutions in all disciplines, from humanities to science. According to you, how do you analyze the quality of education or the standard of education compared to the rest of the countries, keeping your idea of the objective education in mind?
Right. So let me answer it in two parts. There is in chemistry, you have what is called the rate determining step. So in the field of education, I think the rate determining step is the university system. And I did not have time to actually delve into this because that would have been, I purposely decided to concentrate on what we teach rather than how we teach, because just to spend 30 seconds on what changes I foresee. The changes I foresee, especially after COVID, we have realized that in 15 years time, if we are clever and careful, we wouldn't need universities at all. Everything would be online, everything. So I think how we teach is going to change amazingly, and I think the government knows it, but I wonder sometimes, does it know it to that extent to which things are going to change? Everything is going to be so. At long last, the wishes of millions of Indians is going to be fulfilled. There will be no JNU. No, I'm just joking. I hope JNU remains. But the question that you asked, and to answer that, is this rate determining step. So I think I calculated maybe 4 or 5 years ago, there are 15 million students who come out who cannot enter universities after class 12 because there are only 800 or 900 universities. I don't know how many have been made. In fact, there was Professor Yashpal fought this case in the Supreme Court because at one instance, there were thousands of universities that were springing up in Chhattisgarh because the rules were so lax that even if you had a room, you were calling it Vishwavidyalaya. So there were thousands of them. So Supreme Court judgment came, everyone should read it. It's a beautiful judgment. And after that, they put a stop to this, but still, we are just not equipped. And like India leapfrogged telecom, at one point of time, I'm the child of 80s, how in the hell are we going to get a telephone from? How the hell, where is the connectivity coming from? And suddenly one fine day, because of technology, we simply leapfrogged it, from landline to now mobile connection. So same thing is going to happen in the field of education. Otherwise, I see no future. We have to leapfrog it. This whole concept of physical teaching has to end, and it will end. Give it 10 years, 15 years, maybe sooner. As far as the universities are concerned, I think, and please don't misunderstand me, I'm not saying the university should end right now. There has to be a viable method to replace and mechanism to replace the university before we end the university system. But right now, what we're doing is we are creating these small centers of excellence. Now, and we are ignoring the university system. And most of these centers of excellence are being created by zamindars. So for example, some very influential guy just retired, you give him a center of excellence to run with 5 or 10 faculty members. I'm just talking of science, but it is, I think, the case with humanities as well. As you did very well for 65 years. Here is your reward for working so hard, to quote the Kings, the song from Kings. And what this does is that it does create centers of excellence. But how many people can you teach in those centers of excellence when you have only 5 or 6 faculty members and they're just doing research? Research and teaching have to go hand in hand, because you cannot do research without learning. A professor is learning all the time. There is one Professor Vaidya on Twitter. He says, a teacher, his Twitter bio says, a teacher who's interested in learning. It's so beautifully said in one line. That is what it should be. So I think unless we return to this university culture, I don't think we are going to improve in our rankings. And just let me end by saying this. You had one of the most magnificent universities of the world in Nalanda, and the government tried to resurrect it, right? And it has sanctioned over 10 years, I think 2,700 crores for it. This was the UP, and the BJP is carrying on with that. And can you believe it? Science and mathematics is not one of the fields that is going to be taught in this university. Now, I ask you, is that not a crime? Why should I not get a bureaucrat who decided that, or an academician, or a technocrat, or even the Prime Minister who said, look, let's not have chemistry, physics, biology, and science and mathematics being taught in this Nalanda University? It should have taken the pride of place, So rather than churning out doctors, we are going to be churning out spin doctors from this Nalanda University. I'm not saying all of them would be like that, but it's the wrong way of going about it. When you have liberal arts universities, I mean, that liberal university, what does that mean? Science is not liberal. Science is the most liberal of domains. So you have something like Ashoka University, supposedly a very good university, but it doesn't have fields of science. In fact, only in the last year, when it began, there was no scientific discipline being taught there. It's only in the last year that they have started a little bit on biology, I think, if I'm not mistaken. But this is the way we think. It's a zamindari system. We have a fiefdom, let me rule over it, let me protect it, rather than imbibing a lot of these values, cultural, scientific, artistic values coming together. And that can only happen in, university like MyBHARAT, or, that the kind of thinking has to be there. University has a sacred place in India. It has to be preserved.
Thank you very much, sir, for delivering this talk with so much insight and real felt emotions through you. And we could just see that, and not just emotions. I feel it is your experience that has taken you through all of your thoughts that you presented with us today, so fearlessly and with so much conviction. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you very much. Very kind of you.
Speech.
Once again, thank you to Disha Bharat. Thank you so much. It's been an honor.
And definitely a big thanks to all of our audience for having been with us for this speech, and really hoping to have the same sort of an interaction with each other for another 5 days till the 15th of August. And here is a look at a sneak peek at tomorrow's events. So tomorrow we'll be having a talk on about Karnad Sadashiv Rao, an unsung freedom fighter that not a lot of us know about a tribal freedom fighter, Birsa Munda, and of course about Onake Obaba. We have students who are going to sing melodious and dancers to present their performances with us. Also in the evening, we will be having a talk on Idea of Bharat, Resurgent India, Journey since 1947 to 2020 by Shri J. Nandakumarji. And please be with us for this talk and also for the morning session of ours, the youth program. Please make sure to share this link with your family and friends and all those people you believe should be a part of this enriching journey of knowledge and insight. Please like our Facebook page and share this link to all people, and join with us tomorrow at 11 in the morning for the youth, for the students program, and at 6 in the evening for the distinguished lecture series. Thank you all so much. Bharat Mata Ki Jai.